As part of the Women Student Union commitment to academic development support, this webinar series is designed to guide students through the full research journey from the fundamentals of academic thinking and writing to the production of complete, well-structured research paper. Before we start, a few quick reminder. Please keep your microphone muted during the session. You may write your question in the chat section at any time. Make sure to register using the Google form that has been shared in the chat section. The session structure is divided into two parts. The first part will be the presentation part, which will be approximately 60 minutes, or it can be adjusted if needed. The second part will be question and answer session will be 15 to 20 minutes. Today's session is titled Introduction to Scientific Research, and we are honored to host Ronald Gumba as the speaker for today's session. Ronald is a dual PhD candidate with the School of Business and Management at Institute of Technology Bandung in Indonesia, and also at the Center for the Resilience Business and Society at Coventry University in the United Kingdom. His academic background includes a Master of Business Administrative in Green Energy from the University of Bologna in Italy, a Bachelor of Business Administrative and Marketing from Makakiri University in Uganda. And he also has a diploma in insurance from the Chartered Insurance Institution from United Kingdom. Ronald's research focus on sustainable finance practices within state-run and state-owned financial institutions, with focus in environmental, social, and governance practice and the key drivers behind them. He also conducted research on financial and digital inclusion, particularly in displaced and vulnerable contexts. In addition to his academic work, Ronald is the author of 3 books that has been translated to French, Spanish, and Portuguese. His latest book, published in 2023, titled More Than Cash, Relief Cash Transfer as a Springboard for Recovery and Long-Term Development. His second book, published in 2021, titled Perception and Pricing Power. And his first book, published in 2020, titled On Our Turn to Pollute. And with that, we conclude the introduction of our speaker. Ronald, welcome again. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Such a great introduction. It doesn't feel like I'm the person. I'm really interested about this discussion because I'm also not only doing research for purposes of a PhD, I'm doing research because I really enjoy research. So this is the kind of topic that I'm always excited to discuss, and I never track time when it comes to this topic. But for today, I have to track time because because I want to listen, and also I want to us to have more time to discuss. So I've prepared a short, I think not more than 12 slides to get us, not necessarily to present this topic, but to stir up a discussion, ignite some thinking among us so that it can usher us into a discussion session. So I'll share my screen in a bit. So there are 2 essentially presentations. There is like a general stirring of the discussion, and then I've prepared a kind of dummy example of how to navigate from idea to concrete research objectives. So let me start with the first part, which is to stir. Let me then share my screen. Great. So this one, screen 2. All right. So let me go into presentation mode. Great. So I won't dwell much on this. Apologies for my other half. I'm doing a double degree with ITB, but I could only get the slide deck template from Coventry. But I'm doing a double degree between Coventry University and ITB. So to get us started, thanks to Abdallah, we did have, some brainstorming. What are kind of, the expectations? And I've highlighted a few. What are some of those essential skills? In fact, this is one of the ones I start with. What are some of those essential skills? And I know we are a diverse group. Not all of us are doing PhD. Not all of us are doing masters. Not all of us are doing bachelors, and even not all of us are from the same topic. So I will be cognizant of that. So I will intentionally be very broad in terms of describing some of these things. And then the other part is, what is research? The kind of research I did for my master's is so different from what I'm doing for my PhD, and my bachelor's was also a very interesting dynamic as well. And then the other part I saw is topic. So what topic do we choose? What's a good topic? And how do we frame a research problem? So these are kind of the discussions we'll be having. And I think there is that part which says, simple example. So I hope I will have a simple example to share with you at some point. And then what are some of the common mistakes? I've been debating whether even to call them common mistakes. I'm just checking the time so I can time myself. I think there are no such things as mistakes in research. They are just, some challenges we come across, and well, how can we avoid repeating some of those? How can we learn from those challenges? And then lastly, there is this aspect around the outcomes, what comes out of this research. Because when we start research, we really don't know where we are going. And that's kind of the norm with research. It surprises you. That's what a good research really does. So starting with skills, one of the gentlemen here, actually, I did meet both authors of this paper. They are part of the research center that I belong to on the Coventry side, Jason and Glauco. And when I came across that, I just found out last week that they have this paper around. They try to find out what are those skills really that researchers need. And for them, of course, they focused on doctoral skills. And because I know how rigorous they are as researchers, I said, okay, I'm going to throw this into a word cloud and see if I use their paper and I ask IT tools to get what are the main words out of this paper. Because I'm sure if I crunch out a word cloud, it will really crystallize what I'm looking for from their paper. And when I look at this, we are not surprised, that in any research you will produce a document, in this case, a thesis. There will be some kind of output. And then you will have to, some people will evaluate it. It may be journal reviewers, it may be examiners and all that. So I'm really not interested in those mechanics of the research. But what I'm interested in is what skills are coming out of this paper that they have written, because both gentlemen are actually examine a lot of researchers and they are responsible for a lot of research work. So some of the things I pick out is, we see the term knowledge, that there is something that you're going to produce that is going to extend the way we think about something. And it doesn't have to be a doctoral one. For example, for my master's, I did a practical research project in Italy, in Rome, based in a bank where the bank's problem was, oh, we have this money we want to lend, but nobody's applying. So they reached out to my university where I was a student and they said, can you give us a student to just spend 3 months to figure out how people can start demanding for our loans? And so this knowledge, so-called, does not really always have to be you know, uh, the formula for pi or the, it can be in different contexts. But essentially, the main point is that in research, your skills are going to help to produce knowledge. And related to that, interesting coincidence, next to knowledge, there is the word contribution, that essentially there is something you're bringing that is new, quote unquote, that there is some newness, there is some novelty, there is something new that you're introducing or you're extending. And a lot of researchers spend a lot of time worried that maybe their contribution is not big enough, or maybe their contribution is not incremental enough. How much of a contribution do we really make? And so I think that is something just to be cognizant of. And of course, excellence is what, I'm not surprised it's there, because many people, examiners, reviewers are looking for excellence. So as you do your research, you're really worried, am I above the bar or am I below the bar? So that's kind of something to be cognizant of. So I'm not surprised excellent comes in there, because the authors of this paper are really obsessed with researchers being excellent. And I'm sure the Yemeni Students Association has organized this to really contribute towards that. I also see originality coming up in this word cloud, that and I think this is a tricky one because in today's age, so when you're beginning as a researcher, you're worried that maybe everything under the sun has been done. What else can be done? But actually, as after you spend a little while, you realize there's a lot of angles, and I'll share an example later on. But essentially, the idea is that it's you, that it's your work, and it's something that you have devoted yourself to. So that's the originality, I would say. And then there is another word which is interesting here that piques my attention, rigor. I think rigor is, in my view, the most important word researchers need. I think when you look at publishing of papers, what most reviewers are trying to do is increase your rigor. Like, for example, I had a paper rejected by a journal because I had only done 3 countries analysis, and they said, you're examining a region in ASEAN, and ASEAN is 10 countries. Why are you limiting yourself to 3? And eventually I expanded that paper to about 6. What were those reviewers saying? They were saying you need more rigor. They were saying we are not happy that 3 is not, in their view, 3 was not rigorous. Rigor is how robust is your research. I think I've also had a paper rejected when I did a review paper, and the reviewer said, no, we feel that the number of years you're analyzing is too few. Why not do 20 years? Why not do 10? So I think the word rigor, you don't hear it a lot in research, but actually it's perhaps the most critical, one of the most critical things when it comes to successfully publishing your paper. When people feel it's rigorous, they really are happy with it. And I've seen many papers, the way they express rigor in research is that especially I see this among scientists. I see this in more like chemistry, biology, where they conduct so many tests, especially when they're excluding different scenarios from happening. So I just share with you this word cloud, which comes from, of course, this paper. And these are some of the things that trigger my thinking. And I'm sure others will come up. But in the interest of time, I'll proceed. So I should have started here. One of the intriguing things about research is what people see and what is it you see. And I think this was a puzzle by a gentleman called Antoine de Exupéry. I can't pronounce the French. He was a Frenchman, and when he was young, he was not a happy child because he drew a picture and he went to school and asked his teacher and said, "Teacher, what have I drawn?" And the teacher said, "You've drawn a heart." And Antoine was so unhappy because he had not drawn a heart, he had drawn something else. So he had to explain what he had drawn, and it had annoyed him because what he had drawn was an elephant inside of a snake. So this snake had swallowed an elephant, and he was unhappy that adults demanded of him to draw this picture. But he thought, this is simple enough. You can see that there is an elephant and it's being swallowed by a snake. So I actually always have a copy of this book with me, and now I still have a copy because I'm always fascinated by his problems. They look simple, but they are quite telling. So why do I bring this into research? I bring this into research because essentially you have this idea, you have these things that you're trying to explore, but you have this challenge that Anton had, that you think everyone sees the heart, the elephant, but people see the heart. And so essentially this is one of the puzzles around your research. Is not only about what you find, it's also about how you communicate what you find. And many times I have given my paper to somebody else and said, "Help me. Am I seeing what I'm seeing? What is wrong with my paper?" And sometimes they will tell me that maybe the torch, if I may use a torch, maybe I'm not touching in the right place as well. And people are still seeing the heart and they're not seeing the elephant inside of the snake. And I think that is something that unfortunately did not come out in this word cloud. Communication plays a very big part in your research. And as researchers, I think one of the reasons we go to conferences is to just be better at telling our story, that this is actually a snake swallowing an elephant. Great. So ultimately, what is it that, what are we doing when we are researching? And I picked this analogy from my training in my first year in Coventry, that if we consider the sphere of your field, now this is a bit, you can look at it different ways. If you're researching in field of pharmacy, just think of the research could be the research within pharmacy. If you're looking at business, it could be the field of business. However, within your field, you probably narrowed down, like in my case, sustainable finance is such a broad field. But I say I'm going to focus on this definition of sustainable finance. And within that sustainable finance, I'm going to even narrow it further. I'm going to focus on financial practices of governments. How does government behave when they become a businessman? And should government even be doing business? And how do they behave? So my dot becomes smaller, that I'm no longer interested in this murky world of finance. So in your field, this is something that is extremely critical. So I found this imagery to be quite, powerful. But at the same time, you ask yourself, how do you arrive at this topic? You ask yourself, when you say, a lot of the times, you have to define where you are. Even if I say that I'm examining government as a businessman, which government am I speaking at? Is it in Asia? Is it, so there's always this, the dot keeps getting smaller. The dot keeps getting smaller, and many times you will hear researchers tell you that your topic is too broad. So for you, you think you've narrowed down, but people think no. People will tell you you're still here. You feel that you've come close to a dot, and yet in that dot there's a whole sphere. So I think that's just something that's why I keep saying that a lot of research is actually a problem of this, how you communicate your research. Anyhow, ultimately, and this is something I really liked about the training I got at Coventry, ultimately what you're doing is you are just extending this area by just a little bit. And if you do this over whatever period of time you have, then you will have been a researcher. That you will have extended, and I think the word they used was, there is a word in the cloud, you will have knowledge, that you will have extended our knowledge of this sphere that you have. You will have extended our knowledge just by a little bit, and that little bit is enough for you to get your bachelor, your master's, and your PhD. Great. So now there is an important thing, rarely spoken, rigor and saturation. Saturation, you will meet it, especially if you're doing master's and PhD. But rigor, it may not come up. But saturation is essentially, as you study, when do you stop? When is it that you finally extended? When have you reached, where do you end this study? You know, because your resources are limited, both in time and you're one researcher. You're not researching one topic as a team. I've met people who are professional researchers. I remember I was in Birmingham for a conference, and this gentleman kept telling me, our research team, our research team. In my mind, I was like, what is this research team? And then I realized that some people, after finishing their studies, they organize themselves into research groups and keep producing a lot of papers as a group because they realize as individuals you'll be slow. So they're a group of about 5 people and they keep doing research together as a group. So for them, the resources they have are not the same as me and you we have when we research as individuals. So I think I just put a few quotes here about knowing when to stop. And I think in my first year, I faced this problem of the topic I was studying just never seemed to have an ending. There's always a spin. There's always a story around it. There's always another twist. So I think knowing when you've fully exhausted, and I think we shall have an example on this. So I will not dwell too much on this. Now, before I get to the example, I wanted to share a few things with you, which is it's important to remember, sorry, before this. Sorry, my computer became too fast for me. It went to the, yeah. So right after this, there is this slide that I want to share with you, because after this, then there's one more slide and then we do the practical. It's important to be cognizant that we are here in this Zoom call as researchers, but we have different purposes. Some are researching because, you know, there is something unknown. The apple has fallen from the tree and you're obsessed to find out why it fell down and did not float back up, you know? So you want to find out the gravitational force that brought it. There's something calling you. For other people, and I think maybe I might be falling in the second category, it's something that's passion. You find it as something passion. You have a passion for it. For example, I think the one example I could give is Lewis Hamilton. I remember before he became the rally driver he is, the story that his parents say is they went to a shop and they bought him a toy car. But they were surprised at his maneuvering of a toy car as a child, because in the words of his father, he had very good eye-to-hand coordination. So in his case, I don't have his case here. His case is talent. And I think this is true. I've met some people, even within Itebe and Coventry, where you just see that even if they do not have a calling, they are not driven by research, and there is no objective that they're chasing. They're just talented researchers. I think coming to my favorite in Itebe is Professor Gatot. he's just a machine of research. Like he's so intelligent about research, and it's maybe a fourth category. But I just wanted to have you aware that your objective may also influence your research. That maybe your objective is just to get a degree, or maybe it's a combination of these. And so the last slide I have before we go to the practical is some things you just need to be aware of that pertain to your research, which I find critical. And this may be related to your goal as well. I did meet a researcher. She has since passed on, unfortunately. I was hoping to put a copy of her book here. Her book is called Ethiopia in Theory. And she's one of the researchers that said that for her research possessed her, that for her and her research were one and the same. She's Ethiopian, she was Ethiopian, she immigrated to Canada and later on in the US and was teaching in the Ivy League there before her passing. But she said that her life caused her to go into that research, and therefore the research was possessing her. So sometimes you will have a research where you and the research, you're one and the same. However, for most of us, like in my case, it wasn't. My case, and sometimes you can flow because the second category describes me well, the tussle, that research is going in different directions. So when I started the PhD journey, I thought I knew what problem was with sustainable finance. And for the first 2 months, me and my supervisory team, we were going in different directions. I was saying, I've written a book about this topic. I know this topic. And this is the problem. But my supervisors were saying, Ronald, you need to see this paper. So they shared with me a paper. And I was shocked. The findings were not exactly what I thought were the findings. I thought the problem was a certain thing, and the evidence was telling me something else. So it was a fight. I'm going this direction, the evidence is going in the opposite direction. So for me, my journey began actually in that confrontational way. So maybe this might also be your case, that you might have preconceived ideas about what you think is the problem, but then the evidence will tell you that maybe it's not the real problem. Maybe there are other problems. However, for other researchers, they may reach the third stage where they say, okay, I will follow the research. And a good example of this is the question you face as a researcher, and I think we are going to tomorrow discuss methodology in the same forum organized by the Yemeni Students Association in Union in Indonesia, is which methodology do you follow? Is it quali? Is it quant? And I faced this challenge. I said, do I go qual? Do I go quant? And I surrendered. I said, let the evidence tell me what I should do. Let me follow the research and let me see what the research tells me. Does it lead me to qual or quant? So my design at the time led me to mixed methods. And it was the demand of the research. I had separated myself from the research and said, you let the research tell me what methodology makes the most sense. So I analyzed it and said, okay, maybe this is what it's telling me. However, I did encounter a researcher who told me, okay, Ronald, you claim your research is telling you your research objectives are taking you in different directions. And so the research objective one is inviting a quantitative analysis, is inviting quali. And you claim that to do the most justice to your research, that you're going to do mixed methods to satisfy your objectives fully. But they asked me a question, and to this day, that question lives with me. They said, but who are you? Which is this fourth area where I put the fingerprint. Who are you really as a person? How do you see the world? And I think this made me to pause. Do I see the world as something that can be determined for sure? That the answers to particular questions can be certainly determined and computed and calculated? Or do you see the world as a more abstract entity that is neither black nor white? And so I had to do some self-check, and I realized I'm actually someone who sees the world as a very complex being and one that is so evolving. And I realized that maybe as a researcher, I can put myself into the research. But at the same time, I feared that if you remember what the example I shared with you, that I had preconceived idea of how I thought the problem, I was worried that because I have a preconceived idea, I would rather go quantitative because I'm worried if I do a qualitative study, I may influence the research, and I don't want to influence the research because I've already known myself that I am biased in a certain direction on my topic. So I just flash that for you to know that you just sometimes some researchers believe that for them they see a world in a certain way and that's what they follow. And I can see even within Itebe, there are some people who swear by a certain methodology. In fact, in the UK, I met some professors, they told me the best theory in the world is institutional theory. And the world they see through that lens. And you find that in academia and in research, people are known for particular. There are people in Itebe who are known for ethnography. And for them, there is no research you can do which does not involve you sitting under the tree for 5 years to analyze how the leaves fall, how the branches are created. Because for them, they believe that's how knowledge is created. So I just want you to be aware there's that reality. Whether you go with it or not is your decision, but there's something in you and I which makes us predispositioned towards a certain thing. And maybe that's us. But whether you bring that into your research is another question. And lastly, maybe more realistically, in most research, sometimes your supervisory team will force you into a certain direction. So I call it the no agency. You don't have a say so much in which direction. And sometimes there is no one box. Sometimes your supervisory team will indirectly lead you into a certain approach and then later realize, okay, maybe there's resistance in this approach regarding your research design, and maybe you need to go into a demand-driven approach or something like that. So this was the last slide before we go to the discussions and questions. But before we go into it, I had promised I would share a real example quickly about how to navigate that. And for this, I'm going to use a mind map. So I will, first of all, stop sharing this and then escape from the PowerPoint and then share a different screen, the last one before. So this one. I don't know if this will be helpful, but in case it is, so I'll look at, because I have a different screen here. So I just share an example. So for example, your problem is that that there is so-called climate change, that the weather is unpredictable. Indonesia has been having its fair share of extreme weather in different places. Some of it is man-made, like deforestation and the like. But let's say this is an idea, because the challenge Abdallah gave me was that how do you move from an idea to objectives, to research questions? So let's imagine you start with that. And if I zoom out, you then say, okay, so what happens? So you see people in 2015 saying, oh, we have the Paris Agreement and we are going to limit our goal is to limit temperature to 1.5 degrees pre-industrial level. And then if I fast forward, I come here and there's this projection that currently, I don't know where we are, but we are approaching 2050. And the estimate is that we are on track to actually exceed that 1.5, that will probably be at about 2 degrees above pre-industrial level and so on and so forth. And so let's assume that's your idea, that you are the savior. You want to come in and rescue this situation for which people were hoping in 2015 would be at 1.5, right? So if you start from there, then the question is, what idea are you going to front from this perspective? So because I'm a finance guy, I'm going to immediately think of money. I'm going to think of how does finance play a role within this drama of 1.5? So if I fast forward to 2020, this was in Egypt, Sharm el-Sheikh, and the Conference of Parties 27. I think this must have been 2022 or 2023, when people in Egypt said, "Oh, the world needs 3 trillion to solve this problem. If we want this graph not to be doomsday and it maybe stays, this graph drops." I think you can see there is a blue line here, and the blue line is if we do something, if we come up with the 3 trillion, there will be a change. If we don't want to go upward and we want to keep at below 2 degrees or 1.5 before pre-industrial levels, so this black shows when we were not sinners, when we were good with the environment. Now, if this is the money, for me as a researcher, one idea you can say is that you can get this topic and say, and look at it and critically say, as a researcher, what evidence is there that 3 trillion will result in this? What's the connection between this picture and this picture? That who is there to prove that this 3 trillion will cause the graph to collapse? Maybe there will be 5 trillion and we'll still be in this situation. And so that's one angle you can bring up. And if you bring that angle, then you need to produce evidence. So for example, I start to ask researchers, has anyone connected the two pictures? And so this researcher says apparently that they find that climate finance can actually cause the graph to drop. Other people say, so what am I suggesting here? That after you start with your idea, start to hear the gossip in the topic. That after you have this idea, start to take what I would call a temperature check. Just try to see what are people gossiping about this topic in research terms. And in my world, I found a lot of researchers not agreeing that these two pictures are connected. So for example, sorry for the color contrast, but this researchers say that actually the two may not connect. They say that if you provide the money, if I'm an investor in Indonesia and I receive this 3 trillion, I might run to Yemen and start a new factory there, because in Yemen, there are no laws that will stop me from producing X amount of emissions. In Europe, you have to report on your emissions. And if you exceed a certain number of emissions, you should buy carbon credits to offset, or you should do something. So this researcher said that actually people might escape to lower middle income countries where the increased production activity is likely to be powered by high carbon. So people will run to my country in Uganda and they'll set up factories, because in my country, we just want jobs. We want jobs and taxes. So this 3 trillion, you need to be careful if you think it's going to result in the graph dropping. So this is just one example of the criticality that you can bring. Another criticality, a second criticality you can ask is that you can ask yourself, and this is a question that I like, where is this money coming from? Who is producing it per year? If we believe these two researchers that apparently money equals reducing emissions, then who is bringing the money and why should they bring the money? What is their motivation? Are they so interested in saving the world? What is driving them? So I bring this question and I put it back into the research world. I say, researchers, tell me, what have you found? And I give them one simple question. And I put this question here. And I say, what's in it for investors? Is it attractive? And so you started with this little problem of temperature, but somehow your problem has given you a lot of options. And in this case, I want researchers to start telling me their findings. I want them to tell me why should 3 trillion be, why should people give part with their money? And what is it that you have found? And then we find different stories. And these are the stories that in your research area, I don't want to dwell too much on this topic because your topic is different from mine. But eventually I keep asking different questions in this example until I reach a point. Remember that thing of saturation? You reach a point where there are no new ideas. There are no new ideas or radically new ideas. And at that point, you make a stop and say, okay, I've had the noise, I've had the debate, and this is where I think I can dwell on. And another question, lastly, I can just flag before we go to Q&A. I remember when I remember the early conversation that some people said this picture and this picture are not connected. And the reason they said is there are loopholes, and there are many loopholes. For example, these days people are reporting ESG, environmental impact, but a lot of them, can you really verify that data? I remember when many years back, 10 years, 15, in 2023, Intel, who makes chips in our laptops, went so far as to put sensors at their factory roof just to measure emissions. And then they set up a website and said, I put this in my book, in Our Turn to Pollute. They set up a website where you and I, who are customers of Intel, could actually in real time see how much emissions they were emitting. They had a real-time website. In fact, if you take a lift at SBM, the School of Business and Management in ITB, you will see screens next to the lift which show you the amount of energy being consumed. So if you really want to connect these pictures, you will eventually ask yourself, how do I stop loopholes? How do I make sure the screen I'm seeing in SBM telling me SBM is saving so much power, telling me Intel is emitting so much? How can I be sure? And I think that's one example of a direction you could take where I said, okay, what have researchers found about efficacy of investments to avoid this issue that some researchers are saying these pictures are not connected? So I hope this essentially, it's not the end of everything, but essentially it gives you an idea of where you can start. You have this idea, put it out there into this rabbit hole where people are going to tell you different stories and start following. So in my case, I start following each of those stories until I reach a point at the end and I feel that, okay, I've had it all, and these are potentially the gaps that I can occupy. I say, okay, this is what I'm seeing is missing, the so-called novelty, the additional, that little diagram I showed and said, this is where Ronald will extend. That these are the giants, and on their shoulders, this is where I will go. That they have taken us this far, and this is where you and I can now play a part. And I call that potential gaps. However, I have so many gaps. Then I say, okay, I only have 3 years. I'm one person. Which gap am I going to occupy? So I start saying, what are the weaknesses with each gap? You know, are all gaps equal? I start critically saying, okay, I could analyze, for example, the quality of returns that comes out of this. And then I would say, okay, on whose giants will I be standing? Okay, I'll be standing on the giants of these two research products. And then I would say, what are the weaknesses for each? What are the weaknesses for each? And I even would go further and say, okay, research is data, but where will I get the data? So I start listing, okay, maybe potentially I could get data from XYZ. And then eventually I write a paper about it. So this is the fun of it, that you start with a small story and you start, building a mind map, and trying to brainstorm. So I'll stop here and then we can have discussions. Yeah, thank you. Back to you, Abdallah.
Thank you very much, Roald, for the clear and insightful presentation, actually. Even though I think it was too complicated, I think. But yeah, for that one, actually, now we will move to the Q&A session, which will be for 20 to 15 minutes. Anyone who want to ask, please, you may click raise your hand, and after that, I'm going to pick you, or even you can write your question either in Arabic or in English, and I will manage the translation. Please, you may start anyone. شباب أي واحد يشتي يسأل سؤال ممكن يسأل عادي، يسأل بالعربي وأنا بترجمها بالإنجليزي. تفضلوا. Anyone? I think it was too complicated for them.
No, I think it was too easy. It is now too easy. Too easy. Yeah.
Guys, even you can ask outside of the material, actually,
Yeah.
related to the basic and also the fundamental of academic research. You can ask based on that also.
Yeah, we also have that list you provided. So we can wait for questions. The other option is we have that list of things you provided. We can do a quality assurance check. How are we doing on that list? And see which, and you can be the judge and see where do you feel we've not covered. Yeah. Let me bring that list back. But as questions come in.
Yeah, till there is a question, maybe you can just make it like open question. Because anytime you may ask, don't be shy.
Yeah, so this is the list. So from your view, Abdallah, where do you think we've not given justice to?
Okay, let me see. What can we say about the common mistakes students make at the initial stage? Maybe you can elaborate more about that.
Yeah, I've made a lot of them, and I'm sure you've also made many. I think the common mistake is okay. One is what I did. I know the problem before I even start. I think I learned the hard way that I even don't know why I thought I knew what the real gap was. And I think this is the part of the problem for this is because to apply for a master's, PhD, sometimes they will ask you to submit a proposal and you're at home and you're like, you don't want to do extensive literature review. You just say, okay, I think the problem with landslides is deforestation, and so you will just, come in. And so one of the mistakes is lack of flexibility, not being flexible to just open your mind and say, because if you if you start with a strong position that's not backed by evidence, you will struggle in your research in terms of your work. You're trying to force something. But if you come freestyle and say, okay, surprise me, it may be easier. So I think one of the mistakes is being so fixated like me for 2 months. Every time I meet my supervisors, I tell them this is the problem and there is no other problem. There's no other problem. Uh, and I think what affected me is I worked before I did my research. So I was in the field and I was so obsessed that this is really the problem. But yeah, I think that's one of the mistakes. The other is uh, you can underestimate the time demand. I think the research depends at different levels, but research really does consume, especially doctoral research, that and time once it's gone doesn't come back. So think of it that, time is this, think of time as resource almost equal to money. Think of time as resource. So when you get up in the morning, just ask yourself one question. Will you let today go away, or do you want to make the most of it? So sometimes I go home and I'm very sure tomorrow I'm not coming to campus. But in the morning, I just wake up and I'm like, am I giving away these hours? Like tomorrow they won't come back. Tomorrow they won't come back. And so, yeah, just I think that underestimating the time needed. I think the other one is fighting supervisors, especially for doctoral and PhD students. Supervisors always win. We just don't know. We just don't want to accept, but they always win. So sometimes you just have to choose your battles. Like, do you really want to go on this situation and fight them? Would you rather use that time to find? Yeah. So I've also had cases where I've let supervisors win, and then they have lost in the end. So I think what I mean is that there was a time I believed the right methodology was a certain way, and my supervisors wanted a certain way, and I was no without option to let their way win. But when we reached midway the research, they realized no, they got it wrong. We had to go back to the way I had suggested because we were stuck. So sometimes you may get the result if you're right about your opinion. If you're really right, I always believe that if you're really right about what you're suggesting, then the truth will come out. That eventually, even if a different direction is chosen for you, that eventually, that you have a friend who tells you, Abdallah, this is the way to go somehow, and then you refuse to go that way. Then later you say, you know what, you are right. So I think the same way, I don't see much success. I've not seen a student who told me, Ronald, I fought my supervisors and I succeeded. I've not seen that person. So I think if you're so right about your way, eventually your way will come back. But don't have a battle about particular way. We have such a limited time to research. Don't go that direction. Yeah, so I think those are the people side and the time resource, and then the what I would call tunnel vision. Yeah, being so stuck in a particular thinking. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Ronald. We have one question from Muhammad Saeed.
Mm.
So you see, like, I am a master student. My supervisor suggests me to read about a broad topic. He asked me to prepare a proposal. So how can I start?
Sorry, my laptop power was running out, so I have to plug it.
Okay, take your time.
Yeah, this cable is an enemy of research. Okay, so it looks like it's connected. Okay, just
Okay,
let me confirm that the power is charging. No, it shows it's not charging. Okay, my supervisor suggests a broad topic. Uh-huh.
now he suggests him to read about a broad topic.
Yeah.
And based on that, he asked him to prepare a proposal. So he's asking like how to start or from where to start.
Okay. Okay. So there are two ways. One is in that broad topic, if you pick some of the researchers who have studied that topic, you can go to the end of that paper. Normally they have, suggestions for further research. You remember when we had that diagram, it said knowledge, contribution, which is what are you adding? Because your supervisor does not want you to repeat what people have done. They want you to extend that little diagram that says we go further. So I think as you read about that topic, you need two things. You need to know what are people finding about that topic? What's happening in that topic, especially if you can focus on the recent things that's happening in this topic. And then go to the end of the paper and find what are they suggesting for other future researchers to do. I've seen some papers, they put that even in the abstract. Some papers they say in there, because writing of an abstract is not fixed. Some people write in different styles. But I've seen some people in the abstract say, we suggest future scholars to do X, Y, Z. So that could be one approach. Another approach is within that topic, you can now insert yourself. You can look at the topic and say, within that topic, what excites you? What are you interested in? So, for example, if you look at broadly the topic of sustainability, some people are using it to look at sustainability has three aspects. It has the environment, it has the social aspect, it has the governance aspect. So some people are just focused on the social side. Some people are focused on the environment side. Some people don't want to hear anything about the impact on people. They just want to know about the environment. And some people within the environment, they are focused like on, biodiversity and things like that, while, others would be just focused on the carbon market or emissions and things like that. And the biodiversity people are so mad with the carbon people. They are like, what are you guys doing that you're trading carbon, that you're saying that I can pollute so much in Jakarta as long as I can buy carbon credits to offset my pollution? Because the biodiversity guys are like saying, look, who eventually is going to create those credits? Who eventually is going to create the impact? So I think there are two angles you could go. One is to look at what I call the gossip. Because normally when I meet a researcher who is like says, oh, this is my topic, I'm like, okay, tell me more. Tell me, what are people talking about in your field, in that field? What are people talking about? And then, for example, and then once you get a feel of what people are talking about, you may come back to your supervisor and say, hey, this is what's topical. This is what's hot on this topic. And then from there, your discussion will go on up to the point where if your supervisor is convinced that that's the hotness of the topic at hand, he may tell you, okay, go and read 2 or 3 papers, or he may give you 2 or 3 papers and say, go deeper. Go deeper. What are the issues of those topics? What is the real debate happening there in that topic? And so that may be one angle. The other angle is to insert yourself, your own preference. I've seen almost 50% of researchers are not neutral. They have an opinion on their area of research. They have a particular, focus. And once they start talking about it, they go crazy because they're obsessed. So maybe there's an angle, there's something you're passionate about. And that was the let me sorry. Let me go on that one. Yeah, there may be something that you're
There might
specifically
be
passionate.
bias, you mean that?
Actually, bias for me, I look at it two ways. Bias, it can be passion. It may be that, okay, you're passionate about something, but you can be passionate and not biased. You can be passionate and objective. You can be passionate about finding answers without specifically being dogmatic that there is only a certain way. So I think those are the two angles. One is if it's an area that you're not interested in, okay, then just find out what are people talking about and go with that. And supervisors like to have agency. Supervisors like to have the ability to cause direction. So don't go with a prescription and say, this is the topic and this is what I'm going to focus on. No, just say, okay, these are the one or two, three themes, if I may use that word, coming out of this topic. And this is what people are talking about, and listen. Some supervisors actually like if you give them a direction. Some like it when they're the ones who influence the direction. So I don't know which side your supervisors are, but those are the two angles. If you're not passionate about this topic, you can just read the gossip or what researchers are saying, and then present a few themes and say, these are the main themes coming out of this topic, and then see where that goes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, thank you, Ronald. Maybe I will just add some comment for that, or maybe
Mm.
just a follow-up question actually for the same question that had been asked. So, like as you mentioned that you have to look for the hot topic, for example, you might like the same question that our friend he asked his promoter asked him to read in a broad topic. So for this case, like, does it like, let's say for the example that you give it to us, when you see like you talk about sustainable in finance. So if you're looking for this hot topic, is it like you read the last 5 years? So you frame it like I'm going to check like literature from 2000, for example, from 2021 or from 2020 till 2026, for example. Do you frame it like that, or you just keep it open? You go to the 80s to the 90s or what? So this is just a follow-up
Yeah.
question. If you can go very fast, because we have a couple of questions after that.
Yeah, I think, Abdallah, that's a very good question. So I was lucky that I came with a bias or with a position. The reason I say I was lucky, because then I started looking for papers that prove or disprove. And a lot of the literature disproved what I was thinking. So in a way, I did not start with a totally blank sheet. But to answer that question, do you use years? I think years on their own will not really tell you, because some topics that were studied in 1970, up to now, they are being studied. So if you say you're going to focus on the last few years, I think it does not prove that you will get something juicy or something interesting. I think what would be interesting, what would be helpful is if you look at recent systematic review papers. They have to be systematically reviewed. They should not be any other review, because the beauty with systematic literature review is that it's a bit scientific in a way that it gives you a temperature check on what's really happening on your topic. So I think what a systematic literature reviewer does for you, they summarize almost 2,000 of the last 10, 20 years and present it to you and give you, these are the main issues. So I would look specifically at systematically reviewed papers. That is more helpful than a topic paper, because a topic paper can blind you to other themes that are coming out of your topic. So yeah, I think in a way, you're looking at the recent 10, 20 years. Yeah. This is assuming that you don't have a benchmark. There's no burning topic inside the review that you want to. If you're lucky that there is a burning question you have, okay, directly dive into that question. But if you totally do not know which topic to dive into, just get the bigger one, like say climate finance or renewable energy or medicine, or a particular For example, I've seen students who do like particle physics, and they are obsessed with, which materials will make the best collisions, or how do you eliminate the loss of energy when in particle collision. And I met a student at Manchester University who was, making orders to buy the best materials for his setup so that it has the best outcome. And sometimes he would buy these materials and then they would be damaged or something like that. So I think the main thing is, if you don't have a passion for something within your topic, a burning question, even if it's not passion, you have something we call like a calling or whatever it is, then maybe you just look at review papers. Look at the recent review papers, and then I have looked at review papers of 2025, and I'm surprised that there is consistency among them in my topic, that the themes are repeated, which means that it's a good thing. It's a confirmation that the researchers are finding the same things. So that's what I would suggest. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ronald. We
Thanks.
will go to the next question from Osama. So Osama, he say how to make research proposal for particular. He's asking for scholarship and to make supervisor accept me. Also, how to use the AI for research proposal. This is a topic outside. I mean, it's a question outside of the topic, but I hope that
Yeah.
you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think the big word there is accept. That they need to be accepted into this program. They are making a research proposal, and success, the goal here is an admission letter. The goal is an admission letter. So I think in this case, it's very specific. I would look at two things. One is I would look at the supervisor. I would look at their Google Scholar profile. I would check what are they publishing in. A lot of established researchers have a concentration, and they stick within that concentration. They want to be in research. Being a jack of all trades is not rewarding. So a lot of researchers try to concentrate. So look at their Google Scholar profile and get a feel of what topics are they really interested in. If it's entrepreneurship, within entrepreneurship, what is it they're interested in? Is it startups, or is it entrepreneurship within companies, for example? So that would be one area to start. Just look at what their most recent, publications are focused on. And then when it comes to the proposal itself, there are many guides about how to write a good proposal. And I think some of the lessons I've learned is that don't waste your introduction. Don't waste your introduction. I think a lot of the papers I've written and I've given my supervisors to review, they've always really hammered the part of the introduction. Don't waste it, because apparently journal reviewers don't have a lot of time to understand what is it you're trying to do. They want to quickly, to be specific, in the first two paragraphs, to know what is it you're trying to say. So I have found myself that I bring parts of the conclusion into the introduction. Like, okay, this might not apply to you because this is completed research, but at least in the first two paragraphs, let someone know what is it that you really want to do. Don't keep it. It's not like food where you want to bring the dessert last, like the cake you've baked all these weeks for. So you really need to hammer the point in the first two paragraphs clearly. There are many guides on how to do a good proposal. Then lastly, with AI, I think most journals, they accept if you use AI to improve the language, but the idea should really be yours. To be honest, after you spend a lot of time in academia, you will realize that AI is the dumbest student. That a lot of the things AI says, if you trust AI to produce for your proposal, they are not smart enough, to be honest. AI has not reached the smartness of us as researchers, because what it does is sometimes the language, some people have started telling me they can read a document and tell if it's AI or human being. Because AI's language really sometimes they are talking about something, but they're not getting there. They're not getting there. they like to go around the idea, and I think they just watch out for that. Don't rely too much on. There are so many tools you can use for language, and I must say AI is really great at language improvement, but don't rely on it for these other aspects. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, thank you, Rod. Yeah, at the end, you have to read actually.
Yeah. And we are better. I can tell you, we are so much better. I've seen a student, present a paper to their supervisory team, and their supervisory team just read it and say, please, we want to see your opinion. This is AI. This is AI. And I've also seen the work the student produced. And indeed, you can tell because AI is very good at citing and stuff like that. But AI never really has a position. Like that's the beauty with us humans. We can see different debates and say, this, I put my location here. But AI likes to beat around the bush, not decided because it's essentially regurgitating what others produce. So I would say trust yourself. A research proposal is not an extended piece of work. It's not more than 10 pages. And that includes, a lot of things. Sometimes it's just universities for application would say do 5 pages. So just use AI to improve your language, but be the one to read and make the analysis. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Now we will go to Mufid, and after that we are going
Yes.
to read other question. Please
Okay.
go ahead.
First of all, thank you very much for this lecture, amazing lecture. Actually, I'm studying in Turkey, but I got a lot of information from you. I'm so glad for that. So I got one question, if you don't mind, Doctor. How I can return a simple idea from market into a strong research problem from my masters? That's it. A simple
Sorry?
idea, how I can
Yeah.
return it? Yeah. That's it. That's my question. Just how I can return a simple idea from a market into a strong research problem
Okay.
for my masters. That's it, doctor. And thank you a lot.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
so much. So the question is how to move from the idea to a research, right?
Yeah.
Muffet?
The question is
Mm.
how I can turn a simple idea from the market into a strong research problem from my masters. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. So I think this is a great question. How did someone, look at this apple falling and then they said there's a problem. We need to know why the apple is falling. And how do people how do you come up with how do you just start from the idea and move forward? I think sometimes actually it may be as simple as asking the why a few questions like why is this happening the way it's happening, which was the case of why is the apple falling from the tree. So for example, if we look at some of the great researchers, and to this day, like I really respect these great early researchers who would say who would go to the market and see a price on a product and say who decides this price, why is the price like this? And those researchers ended up creating what we have as the demand and supply curve. So if you look at some of the earliest researchers, they were not very complex how they started the idea to research. They were always asking the why and very simple question of like how do companies decide what to produce. So I think we are lucky or unlucky in a way, Mafid, that we are lucky that we have a lot of research that has been conducted in our area. And so we can start to say, what can I add? So one area, Mafid, you could look at is what have people done and what can you add? Because There have been students, not at master's, but at PhD. I've seen cases, especially in Oxford, where a student completes 3 or 4 years of research and they tell them they feel that their research is not worthy of a doctorate or of a master. I've not had cases of the master, but they are not worthy. So the risk you don't want to run is you don't want to run a research where people will say it was not complex enough to deserve a master, or it was not complex enough to deserve a PhD. And after spending so much time, you don't want to end up like that. So to be safe, to be on the safe side, don't go blind, Murphy. The best thing you can do, find out where is the world on this idea you have. Where is the world on this idea? And once you find out the location, the GPS of that idea, you can then walk away from it. And even if you walk away from it by a little bit, that's novelty. Even if you walk away from it by a little bit, it is novelty. So that's the beauty, I would say. So I think the best thing is to locate. Because let someone wake you up at 3 a.m. and you can tell them where the thing is. In fact, the best paper you can produce in the beginning is what I would call a current state. If you Google the word current state of, you will always find a topic. If you Google current state of medicine, current state of technology, of current state of something, you will always find the latest trend or what is in your for your idea. So you just have current state, you go in research databases and you type current state of, then you put your idea, then you will be able to get the GPS location of your area of study, and then from there you can go. It doesn't matter, north, south, east, whichever direction you depart, as long as there is a variance between the current state and where you end up, that variance is novelty. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Ronald. And also adding to that, maybe it's also like a very important question that you need also to ask, like which gap do you intend to fill? Whether it is like empirical gap, theoretical gap, methodological gap. Let's say, for example, maybe you talk about a specific market phenomena, for example.
Yeah.
So you want to study it, but you say like, I want in this case, most of methodology or most of the research they use a specific method. So for you, like maybe after reading, you got the idea that not a lot of research actually use this method. So this will be actually, so you turn your idea actually into a real research, but through like you feel like methodological gap. So this also like can help you like a specific aspect of it. Like I think also, do you remember that day when we were doing hiking? So we were talking, for example, this is an idea from related to extended urbanization. So by doing that, so the concept of extended urbanization is that urban is not only within the city, but it can go also outside of the city. So it's a hot topic in urban planning. So for that, when we talk about graffiti, the painting in the walls, the graffiti, this is like, we know it's an urban practice. It's happened in the city actually. So when we were doing actually hiking, we found this practice actually outside of the city, in the periphery, actually, in the rural area. So this give me an idea actually. I can connect specific like concepts with this topic to produce a new research idea actually. After that, I can do like literature review and I try to develop my idea. So this just was like a comment from me actually.
Actually, that's a really interesting comment of how do you phrase the language. So I'm lucky. I'm seeing different perspectives from Europe and from Southeast Asia, and currently, what I hear professors telling me in Europe is that a lot of students come with gaps that say this topic, there is no conclusion to it, inconclusive findings. That, for example, if let's take loans. A lot of countries are taking loans. You can see, like, For example, in Indonesia, a lot of infrastructure loans from foreign investors. And, you know, a lot of research, some researchers say maybe those, actually, maybe I'm going too far. Maybe let me just use oil. My country recently discovered oil. And the day we discovered oil, everyone was telling us about the oil curse. That maybe oil may not necessarily guarantee that Uganda will be developed. Another area has been aid. You know, a lot of people say, which country has developed because they got so much aid and they developed. So professors in the UK have said students are coming to them and saying they are inconclusive, their novelty, their research gap is because they are inconclusive findings. And therefore, this student says, my research will solve this debate. Once and for all, my research will determine is oil a curse or not? Is aid able to cause development? And it depends. Some professors have told me they don't believe inconclusive findings should be a novelty. Because they attacked because I have to admit one of my so-called novelties was that there are inconclusive findings on something. So I think it's just something to be aware of, that in some examiners will accept that, some examiners will push back. Another novelty, like you've touched on, is methodological, that people have done research and used certain tools, and you're going to use another tool. However, one way I also have a methodological gap in one of my papers, but one of the ways in which my methodological gap has been strong and no one has pushed it away is because I have challenged the other methodologies and explained that they are problematic. So I managed to get some of the recent studies in my area and found the methodology, and I critique the methodology. I critique the methodology has challenges, and I introduce a new methodology for that problem. So far it has stood because it's novelty on two levels. One is I'm not stopping at saying I'm doing it in another way, but I'm saying there's a reason why I'm doing it in another way. So I would just add that if you introduce a methodology, at least try to explain why this methodology is important, or why is it you standing on the shoulders of others is helping. If people read your paper and feel that you're saying you're doing methodology in a new way, only for the sake of newness, there's a problem. But if you're doing it in a new way because of a certain reason, either existing methods are inadequate or your area of focus demands that methodology, and then people will listen. So I think that is another angle you could take. The most common, to be honest with you, the most common gap people use is the dot I shared. That what most people do is they just focus here. Most methodologies I've seen, like in here where I am, in Itebe, a lot of people just zoom more into the dot. So they say people have studied this area in Bandung, but me, I'm going to study it specifically in Dago within Bandung. So a lot of research has escaped, if I may use the word, with the gap of saying, me, I'm going smaller and smaller and smaller. And the reason they say is that Dago is unique. So if you do that, you have to explain the uniqueness of that dot. You have to explain the uniqueness that I'm zooming into West Java because West Java is not Indonesia. And West Java, but you have to provide a description that provides an explanation why this geographical context. Another thing people have used has been a phenomenon. They have said, I'm studying this, but I'm studying it post-pandemic, that apparently there was something that happened before or during or after the pandemic that makes your research gap be created because something has changed you know? So yeah, I think everything you said, Abdallah, perfect. I was just adding on more layers that you just have to be aware that inconclusive findings on their own may not be enough. Methodological newness may not be enough. And there are other ways in which you can strengthen your case. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ronald. We have 3 questions. Maybe you can go very fast on that.
Yeah.
So a question from Saeed. He say like his question is regarding the knowledge gap.
Yeah.
If I am researching a very new area like the specific impact of AI on certain labor markets, especially in our major such as economy or finance, where direct previous studies are almost non-existent. So how can
Yeah.
I build a strong theoretical framework? Also, what is the best way to convince reviewer that this lack of studies is a valid research gap and not failure to find sources?
Yeah, I think that's a very loaded question and a great question. One, because a lot of novelty statements end with not enough research has been done in this area. Now, that is the most hated novelty in academia. Like, that's why researchers are smart. They put it at the end. They put it at the end because they know once you start with not enough research has been done in this area, that people will start, the energy level will drop. And if that's your first novelty, the energy level in the room will drop because people always look for, there must be something stronger than no one has seen the apple falling from the tree. So that, however, these days we know that's so true, especially like the topic you've mentioned, that not enough research has been done, for example, AI in this application. I think the way you can do this is, I always believe in step back. I have 2 tricks I use. Recently, I learned one trick is I use this trick question of, I ask myself, what if I'm wrong? And this has been a very powerful way. Sometimes, recently I conducted analysis for my case study, and the findings were very rough. They were not good to tell the person who gave me the data, the bank. I collected data from a bank, and I found the findings were a bit harsh. So I needed to meet the bank to present the findings, but I didn't want to be harsh because I'm grateful they gave me data. So I asked myself, how do I present the findings? True, how do I state that they are true, but still not too harsh? And the question I came up with, what if I'm wrong? And I think one approach you can use is, what if, for example, in this particular case of AI as a technology may be new, but the process of technological innovation may not be new. So you will find, yes, a floppy disk at some point was more powerful than some of the first IBM computers. But before those IBM computers, before the people who were in the floppy disk age, the floppy disk was technological innovation. So maybe if you zoom out, switch your theoretical framework or review, not about AI, but maybe technological innovation. If we look, for example, at the topic of sustainability, someone may claim it's new, but it's not. I've seen people, researchers, as early as the 1920s, complain about a culture of consumerism. So it's just maybe the way we package it now has changed. So I think one tactic is to do that. For example, I've come across a lot of in the UK. I met some of my classmates who are studying autonomous delivery vehicles. So they are studying where you make an order and it's not delivered by Grab or Gojek, but by a robot. And they're saying, look, I'm not finding studies talking about robots as delivery vehicles. And for them, they are specifically focusing on where the consumer is not you and I, but the consumer is like companies making orders, supply chain management, and all that. So I think the best way to approach this area, because your supervisors are going to push back and say, not enough research has been done is not enough. You could zoom out and say, at the heart of this, what is the solution being offered? So in this particular case, I think you mentioned finance, AI in finance. So in this particular case, you may have to think about what is it the AI is doing in finance? Because at one point, our grandparents used calculators and the world went round and there was no problem. So you may want to zoom out and say, what is the additionality? What is the newness of the AI in finance? And when you zoom out, you will find a big word. In this case, for example, it seems efficiency. It seems accuracy, efficacy. So you may step out and say, maybe what I'm really my circle may not be AI actually. My circle may be productivity and efficiency within finance sector. So I think one tactic you could use is essentially to come up with a definition of what it is you're actually studying, and then you use that, you study those papers in that direction, and then you develop your novelty along those lines. So it's true. This is a very true issue, especially for students studying AI. In finance, I think students studying cryptocurrencies, blockchain technology, digital currencies. So you will just have to step back and say, is the innovation really blockchain technology? Or is it about decentralized ownership of assets? Is it about decentralized versus centralization? And maybe you may not be limited anymore, that not enough studies have been done on blockchain, but then you might have to study about alias debates on central versus decentralized financial systems. So that's, I think the whole thing is to zoom out and define your area of intervention and say, maybe this is, and once you do that, you will find a gap. You will find a gap which is broader. And the beauty with it is, especially in Indonesia and a lot of, it's not common in Europe for students to be so much into the theoretical framework. But I know, like in Indonesia, there's so much about theoretical, on which theoretical foundation. So it will be hitting two birds with one stone, that if you zoom out and look at, even if you're studying AI in companies, some people might say, then you're using institutional theory or using this theory. Remember, in many countries, in many universities, you're going to be asked to develop a theoretical framework. In Europe, it's not so much of a big deal right now about theoretical framework. But if you zoom out, it will be easier for you to find a theory in the early 90s, in the late 1800s, and you'll have two birds with one stone. One is you'll find a theory that's broader, attacking your area of study, and two, you'll be able to find literature on your topic. Yeah.
Oh yeah, thank you, Ronald. Also, I think it's very important also to think about the data collection method for this aspect. We talk about there is a lack of research related to that. So the application of AI, for instance, I remember I attended a seminar actually. A lady, she was presenting the use of AI in agriculture sector, specifically in Indonesia. So she was talking about when she was giving the background and so on. So she was talking about the agriculture practice in rural area in Indonesia. So usually, if you talk about the knowledge, the inherited knowledge, so they talk about, it was like, so a son will inherit this knowledge from his father from his grandfather, and so on. So based on that, they know like the best crop for the market, and also that can be like fit for the land. So it was a try and error actually for that one. So now actually, so the research that she was doing actually is the introduction of AI to agriculture sector or to the farmer in rural area, in which those people actually they ask through the AI and so on, so they get better feedback. So based on the land, based on the market. So for instance, like you cannot just implant something and after that there is no market for that.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
even the return back money will be less than that. So this was one of the
Mhm.
practice or one of the research that she tried to connect it. So for
Yeah.
AI to connect it to a specific, even if you say for a specific labor, you have to be very
Mhm.
specific in which aspect, like also like you mentioned, you have to be
Mhm.
specific. Based on that, you can go
Mhm.
and also after that you think about the data collection method. After that, maybe you can just continue for that one.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's quite a good example you shared. I think if I would step back from that research of AI in agriculture, I would ask myself, what's the big one? The big one is probably they want to make more money as a family, that being able to predict when and market prices and good agronomic practices. They could also zoom out and say they are looking at agriculture extension services, that before there was someone from the government who'd come to your home and tell you how to space the planting, how to do XYZ, and now maybe they are no longer there, and now you need agronomic practices, or the knowledge of the old is gone. So there are many ways in which you could design that circle. And for example, I met people, some researchers who, while some people might look at, say, blockchain as a finance thing, I met a researcher and she told me she's studying blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And immediately my mind went to finance. And she told me, no, I'm studying blockchain and cryptocurrencies as a means of payment for art. So a lot of these art pieces are selling for $1 million, $5 million, and some people are buying art using cryptocurrencies. And this researcher decided to draw their circle around payments for high value art pieces. So I think it's quite the dots are quite interesting, and you're the one with the power to really design them. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Ronald. I think all of us we are tired, especially you. Actually, I think you're still in lab, right?
No, I am. I love to hate research.
So yeah,
It's a painful joy.
it's a good thing to hear that. Actually, we still just have a couple. Like, we still have two extra question, and after that, maybe
Okay.
we can conclude our session.
Okay.
So a question by Nasser. He say like, after accepting the proposal, what is the better thing to write it? Is it uh, literature review or systematic literature review after before writing his thesis?
Yeah, I think the debate is there. I didn't know the difference between literature review and systematic literature review until I submitted a paper to a journal. I remember it was the Journal of Sustainable Finance and Investments. And they told me they rarely accept review papers. And when they do, those review papers have to be systematic literature review.
Mm.
So I then hadn't done systematic literature review. And then I went back to scratch and I did it because I needed to publish. So the Q1 journals will not accept review papers that are not systematic literature review. The reason for this is that when you do a review paper, when you review a topic, it's very hard for people to verify that your findings are really representative of that topic. Because it all depends on many factors. On what day you Googled, that topic, or you searched that topic in Scopus. It depends even which topic you typed. Which words, how did you type those words? So a lot of people are gravitating towards uh, systematic literature review. However, if you're writing your paper for your thesis, you don't necessarily have to do a systematic literature review, because you just want to know what are the main things in this area that you need to be aware of before you go and collect your data. Because when you collect your data, you will come back and find out, when you went and did interviews, for example, that people told you that the main issue they are having is network coverage and electricity. That is the problem they have. That's why they are not able to use certain services. And then you will find that actually this was in some of the literature. So the purpose of the literature is to give you a test of what people have found. And if you go out, and you'll be shocked, sometimes you'll find things that are the opposite. You find things that are actually contradicting that research might say that people don't have electricity. And I remember there was a researcher who went and took a picture of a house next to the electricity pole, but the house did not have electricity, and then came back and said, look, the issue was affordability, that putting a pole in front of my house when I can't afford the cost is not making sense. So what I would say to that is that the review is sufficient for your research purposes, but if you're looking at publishing a review paper, you're safer to do a systematic literature review for only one reason. The reason journals are in love with systematic literature review is that it can be replicated, that anyone can go back and look at the same and repeat what you did and come back with the same findings, because they know that if you search this number of words, you're going to find this number of papers, and you're going to, research is about trust, that how can we trust that what you found is really true? And the reason for that is, for those who are doing like physics or mathematics, people can repeat your formula and see if they find the same thing. They can follow your process and see if they find the same thing, that gravity will always be this number, that pi will always be this number. But for most of the research, we don't have a way to prove it. So with systematic literature review, we can reverse engineer. We can reverse engineer what you did. And if we get what you found, we will believe what it is, and that's how the journal will publish your paper. But for normal purposes, not publishing, a typical review of your area should be enough. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
thank you very much.
The next
Yeah,
step
yeah,
is
continue.
Yeah, so the next step, the question was, what do I do next? So the next step is really, I mentioned earlier, this so-called word of saturation, but I would say that it's to make sure that, is there something else you don't, do you feel that your literature has covered most of the bases? If you keep searching more papers, I remember when I knew I had reached saturation, I read an additional, I didn't fully read, I perused an additional 50 papers, and I found nothing new under the sun was coming that was not previously touched on. So I think some supervisors will ask, are you sure this literature is saturated? Is there a blind spot? It's one thing to see a direction of research and say, I'm not going to follow it. That's acceptable. But for a direction not to totally be totally missed, I think it may be strange. So just make sure that, okay, there is nothing new under the sun coming up. And then from there, you can spend some time to try to see improve how you're talking about your gap. If you have 3 ways you can talk about your gap, you're very lucky. So I'm not including, this area has not been studied. I'm doing it in different method. My study is going to focus on only Hadramaut within Sanaa, within Yemen, but you have a strong novelty. There should be like one good reason why you are claiming to be pushing this small thing that I've put here. That this dot, there should be one, just find for us one dot that you're extending. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ronald. Just to conclude that aspect, if you are going to write your thesis, whether it is for bachelor degree or for master degree, you just go to do literature review. No need for you to do systematic literature review.
Yeah.
So the next question from Muhsin, he said that is it necessary for the result to be strong, or is it sufficient to properly follow the research methodology?
Yeah, I think what is the strong findings? Actually, no one knows. No one knows what are strong findings. So the funny thing about findings, we don't know them until we find them. But something I've found, so I've been sharing my papers with my supervisors, and I've been in shock when they come back in terms of how they managed to say what I wanted to say, but better. So I think don't worry so much. Actually, I found the difference between a strong and weak findings is usually how you write about your findings. How you write about your findings. And maybe you can just orally talk with your friends and say, hey, I'm finding this, and just listen to what they say, because I've been sharing my findings with my supervisors, and then they bring them back, and the way they are talking about them, I'm feeling very proud. Okay, finally I have findings. So I think it's experience maybe at play. I think sometimes it's because you spend too much time and you just need to zoom out and look at the big picture, because the best findings are usually you're contributing towards something, and sometimes you might feel that you're not, but if you zoom out, maybe you might find. So I think for me, if you follow your research process, like we shall find out tomorrow when the next session about methodology, if you follow the process and you have findings, they are findings. They are legitimate, because those findings, I think the main thing my supervisors always ask me is that please go back to your questions. Go back to your research questions. Are your findings helping you to fill this gap? And I think that's one way to look at it. Good findings hopefully help you answer the research questions that you have. But most students, they get it. Most people, they will have findings, they will relate to the research question. But I think where I have learned the gap is really about experience. So this is where you really need a good supervisory team to help you with the language to communicate your findings. And this is where it helps you when you have even your peers, us. If you share with us, this is what I found in a safe way, and then people can, without putting you down, without negatively criticizing you, give you something, and there may be something. So for me, I've found the issue with findings is actually a communication issue. That I have found that the paper, after it goes through my supervisors and comes back to me, doesn't sound like it's my paper. I even feel embarrassed to put my name there, because I feel like they have spiced it up a bit more. So I think I would just conclude the language thing. I expect that you'll tie it back to your research questions. But most importantly, please, if you can zoom out and say, if I was telling my 10-year-old self about this research, how would I communicate it? If you come out, zoom out a bit to a more simple, broader perspective, you may find that that's when actually your findings sound smart. They sound cool if you zoom out. Yeah.
And I think with that, we finish all the question. I believe that. Let me just
Okay.
check for the last part.
Stop sharing.
No, just let me, if you can, Durant, just share it from the first slide so I can take a screenshot.
Okay. All right, let me do that. Okay. So let me go back. Okay.
Just 1 minute.
1 second. Let me go to.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
Okay, now, okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Ronald, for the clear and insightful presentation, actually.
Thank you.
So, again, also, just a reminder, guys, this is a 3 day series, and each series builds on the previous one. So tomorrow we have another series, and after that we have another series. We will share available material through the Union official channels such as Facebook, Instagram, also YouTube. So final thanks on behalf of the Yemen Student Union in Indonesia. Thank you, and we wish you a very productive research journey. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and have a great day. It has been a very long day, actually. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you. Have a good evening. Bye.
Have a good day.
Yeah.